almost at the end of January, Steph. So I'm just wondering how your word of the year is going. How now are you feeling?
I was going to say, what was it? Um,
Now.
Good. I think that I live more now than I ever did before. So
Mhm.
I'll take that. Thanks for the reminder though.
I guess all the somatic stuff as well that you do is all about
Hmm.
now because it's what's going on in my body now. So that's
Yeah,
just thought of that complements it very nicely.
correct. That's why I think I came to it because I started to understand the value of it. So
Hmm.
yeah, I think I'm kind of training myself to be more now.
Yeah.
What about you?
Well, mine was fresh because it was very much about wanting to do new things. We have something called Toastmasters here. I think it's international. Have you heard of it?
I feel like I've heard about it from you.
Maybe. It's about public speaking. So it's like a meetup group and you practice public speaking, but there's kind of a corresponding course that goes along with it. And I've always liked the idea of it, and it's an in-person thing. So I went along to one here and I didn't like it.
Oh,
And I was really disappointed because I was expecting to love it. I went really with high hopes. And I was trying to understand why I didn't like it. And all I could really get to was I was bored. And well, part of it is you are listening to people give short speeches. And I found myself being like, my mind was making all these judgments. I don't want to say it was me because I didn't like the fact that my mind was doing it. But then when I looked at the judgments I was making about other people speaking, they're the same things that I judge myself for with the content that I provide. So
yeah.
it was interesting. And I spoke to a couple of people, but it was this very, you know, it's like a new event. And I went, I didn't know anyone. It was very surface level chit chat. And I found myself wanting to go by about halfway through. So,
Okay.
but it was fresh. But the one thing I am excited about that I'm going to do that's new, that I'm going next week, I am going to a speed puzzling night.
Ooh.
Do you know I
Ha-
like to do a puzzle? Can't do
yeah.
them anymore with the cat. It's impossible. So I haven't been able to flex my puzzling fingers. But you go and you're paired up. Each pair has the same 500-piece puzzle. And like there's wine and stuff like that. And then you basically having a race to see which pair finishes the puzzle.
I wish we had a feature that where we could have listeners chime in on like, does that sound fun to you? Like, yes or no.
Does it sound fun to you though, Steph?
The puzzle part does. But going to like a group of people, I don't know, and like pairing up and competing against them, like
Oh no,
no.
my friend Maria from the gym has invited me
Uh,
with her and her two daughters. She normally goes with her three daughters, but one of them's away. So I'm making up numbers. But I love the sound of it and I might have to find my
okay.
own partner. So I think you have to go with somebody. I don't think you can just turn
Okay.
up and
Still, my immediate reaction is no, but I have a feeling I would actually enjoy it
Mhm.
if I went.
So
I
I'm
need
trying
to
to keep it fresh.
yeah, that is fresh. Also, every time you say fresh, I go back to my 1980s self when that was like an adjective. Fresh.
Yeah.
Both are
Okay.
cool.
Sometimes you just have to accept that the experiences you have are not what you maybe hoped them to be, like with Toastmaster. I wanted it to be something it was not. I could have been defeated by that. And maybe I was a little bit, and then I accepted it.
Why don't you give some context to
Okay.
where this conversation came from? Because I'm orienting to it myself.
Yeah. I think there's so much in the non diet space and positive body image spaces where we're talking about the idea of body acceptance. We're talking about the idea of accepting that we might have a big appetite, for example, or that we have appetites that we can't control 100% of the time. And I love the concept of acceptance. My book is largely built around this concept because it was so crucial for me in my recovery. However, since working with other people around this idea of acceptance and seeing other people trying to figure out what it means for them and what it looks like for them, it's sometimes coming up that it feels like defeat. So it doesn't feel like I've accepted this body. It's more like I've been utterly defeated because I've been trying for 20, 30, 40 years to change the body
Hmm.
and I haven't. So I am going to stop trying to change my body, but only because this thing has completely defeated me,
Yeah.
as opposed to acceptance that I might think of as a more
Yeah.
proactive thing. but they can look so similar because the behavior is similar, as in, okay, I'm not going to continue to fight this.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I thought it could be a helpful topic. It came up in one of my groups this week, in case people relate or are struggling with the idea of acceptance.
It's a subtle difference that it's hard sometimes to put into words. It's coming from a different place to me. Defeat, I can identify with that feeling. I can identify with acceptance. They don't come from the same place, even though the behavior might be the same. Or
Mm.
like for example, body acceptance, I think was a good one. The part of me that resonates with defeat when it comes to accepting my body can still come up, actually. Like I can still get in touch with that and it'll inspire my anger. Actually, like that's how I feel it. I get mad. Like, no, I'm not going to accept. Because that's when I'm in a place of feeling oppressed. I'm in a place of feeling like I don't have a voice about something, that I want to say no to something and I'm not allowed to say no to it. When I'm in that place in my life, or like some resonance of oppression is happening as a theme, that's where I would be projecting onto my body, like the injustice and the lack of I'm not going to go along with that injustice. Like, no, you know, what helps me there is that I've sort of, obviously not 100%, but like a lot, deconstructed the idea that my body is oppressing me, or that something out there that controls my body is an injustice to me. And where the acceptance came from was more understanding that I end up oppressing myself when I don't accept. And that what I'm accepting isn't coming from an evil thing out there, that it's just a fact. It's a fact. It's being able to like see something as like a neutral thing and understanding it as a neutral thing, and how my assignment of what that means has then oppressed me or is actively oppressing me, and that I don't want that anymore. And that when I have actually engaged in the practice of being of like body neutrality, right, where I'm kind of like in the body checking episode, where it was like, okay, this is what is, how actually that feels like the opposite of oppression. And I don't know that I could have conceptualized that until it happened, but it came from a part of me that was like, no, I'm not going to be oppressed by my own body image and my own, like the shift of where the oppression was lying is what changed. I stopped considering it like I'm accepting something and my body's oppressing me, and rather I'm oppressing me via diet culture, via social standards. No to that. And I don't know how you just get there. I don't know that you can consciously do that. I think that that's the difference, is that if you're doing it because someone told you to do it or because somebody else did it, then that will still feel oppressive because you're not gonna feel like it was your choice. You know, like you're not choosing it, and inherently there's not a voice in that.
Well, I tend to work with that piece of it with the idea of willingness. So we're working on the assumption, I assume, please disagree with me if you're not, that we have free will to some degree. Because if we don't, what's the point? That's just too nihilistic for me to even contemplate. So I'm going with we have some free will, which isn't just as easy as to say, oh, I have free will to do it, so I'll do it. But it's where it starts. So sometimes when someone's saying to me, I just can't accept my body, I don't even know how to begin with this body acceptance thing, the question I often ask is, are you willing to accept your body, even if right now you don't have a clue how to do that? And it's interesting because sometimes resistance comes up
Yeah.
in that. And the resistance almost needs to be, something needs to shift in that resistance. I'm reluctant to, I was going to say deconstructed, but I also really want to emphasize that I have the utmost respect for resistance. It needs space to breathe. It needs validation. It
Yeah.
needs holding
Yeah.
because it comes from fear and or shame.
Yeah.
So it's not a case of going, oh, this resistance is here, I need to just try and blast through it or something
Mm-hmm.
like that. It almost, the resistance is, you know, to use your kind of phraseology, often about a lack of safety. It's
Mm-hmm.
fear and it's shame. It doesn't feel safe.
Yeah.
And often in the resistance, things will come up like, the one that often comes up is this idea that I can't imagine being in this body forever. And I think that's a crucial bit about acceptance as well, is we're just talking about the here and now, what is already true,
Yeah.
rather than trying
Right.
to
That's
accept a
important.
projected future. It's so important.
Yeah.
There is still a fear that if I accept that this is true, that somehow the acceptance of this being true is going to create this scary future that feels
Right.
unacceptable to me. So
Right.
there's that piece as well.
That's not helpful to think about, which is why I think that I was like, you only have to accept your body in the present. when I was beginning to recover, because the stories that would come up about the future were
Mm.
distractions, and they still would be. Acceptance is only about what already is. I like the way that you phrased that. Put it in the real. There was a, I have two things to say. Okay, let me try to remember them both. One of them is I have a client who toggles really hard between parts. She's got these two parts, one of which is in resistance about body acceptance for this reason, because it feels like the part of her that's resisting is a part of her that advocates for herself. It's a part of her that's like, no, I don't want to be uncomfortable in my body, which she is physically. And accepting would be, it feels oppressive. It feels like she's giving into something that she doesn't want, and she wants a voice. Then she's got this other side that's like kind of what I was talking about in the acceptance part, where it's, I also don't want to be boxed in, and I don't want to suffer anymore. And the part of me that is accepting is actually also my ally, and also the part of me that's trying to set me free. But it's this battle, and when she's more in touch with the resistant part, the answer to the question, are you willing to accept your body, is no. And it's and she means it. Like it's like no. And that's a large clientele that I'll work with, because that is the feeling I think that many people have. It's the fight. It's the like, nope, you're not going to tell me to accept myself. And I think fight can be really helpful. Fight can be a powerful place to be, because it's an energy of advocacy. Where that goes, I mean, it's going to be case dependent, but for her, there is so much value in letting the resistance, to your point about how it's serving a purpose, like it's housed in fear or shame or anger. And that for many of us, I think that needs room, maybe more room than it's gotten. So I remember that, like, when I was first coaching, there was this part of me that wanted to shut down resistance. Like it wanted to be like, all right, let's fix the resistance. And I found a lot more value in allowing the resistance. And I wonder if social media is another place where we're taught to stop being resistant, to allow, like, accept your body, accept your body. Of course, that message is going to come through, because there's a place and time for it. But I think that if the part of us that's saying no, for better or for worse, whatever, even if you want to reorganize those associations, like I was talking about earlier, if those associations are, my no is my voice, my no is my inner advocate, maybe it's cultivating something that's trying to fight for us, which might need more space. Maybe that didn't get a lot of space. Maybe there was a lot of shutdown. And I work with a lot of clients where there was no voice. And sometimes that voice comes through in the body image piece. I think that that's a slow work to kind of be like, okay, the projection there, and is this a helpful place to be projecting that? It's probably not, but at least it feels like a voice, and to encourage the voice, and then to maybe slowly work on, like, is that the place for the voice? But I wonder if that's where that defeatism comes. It's where the link has been made between my voice and self-advocacy is about losing weight, and those two things getting tied together.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would think of acceptance as about all you're doing. I mean, come on, all you're doing is accepting reality. Okay,
Yeah.
so the reality of your body is as it is today. That's not going to change today. That is reality. And by not being able to accept that, you're rejecting reality. You're in that battle. There's going to be a strong emotional response to that for most people is going to be suffering. But let's just say the resistance is just so strong, and it's just a no. It doesn't matter if that's the cognitive argument and you know that cognitively. Everything in you is just like, no, it's impossible. Then I move back to, can we accept that acceptance doesn't feel accessible right now? Because often we go back a step and there's a battle with that, because often the fact they're talking about it means they're feeling like they should be accepting their body, or it would somehow be beneficial if they could get in touch with this acceptance thing. So they're even resisting or having a conflict with, perhaps, the fact that they're struggling to accept that. So can we just, if we're accepting reality, your reality in this moment is that this feels impossible to do, can that experience be, and I say accepted, I often now use the word allowing rather than accepting. Can that just be allowed to be? Because allowing for me is just not resisting. not judging, not saying it shouldn't
Yeah.
be like that. It's just allowing. And so I often talk now about body allowance rather than body acceptance. Can your body just be allowed to be as it is today, considering it's going to be anyway?
My inner self from the past is trying to do that. I'm trying to be like, oh, if I were in a therapy session with Sarah in 2015, what would that feel like? And there's this part of me that just wants to go like, yeah, I'll accept that I don't want to. And then I'd be in a stalemate because it would be like, almost like, yeah, that's exactly what I want you to hear. I want you to hear that my answer is no.
Mm-hmm.
And that, like, even just naming that, it's like when it's like, yes, thank you. Because my answer is no, and I'm not going to move. Like, I don't know what you talk about after that, but it's the space of yes, please. I don't feel like I should actually accept. That's actually not my goal, and I don't even think it should be. I'm really here to tell you that it's not my goal,
Mm-hmm.
and it shouldn't have to be. And I don't accept that. Yeah, go ahead.
And then as a therapist, I'm going to accept that. Like I'm not trying to be like funny here,
I know.
but it's very much like I will completely accept and allow that that's where my client is. If I try and push somebody into acceptance, that's ridiculous. But I'm modeling this like,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
let's just be with that. Like I honor
Yeah.
that. I have respect for that resistance, and
Like,
I'm hoping that you can
yeah.
feel that coming from me as well.
Well, it's really, again, I'm going back and I'm like, I don't know that I had any. Did I? Did I ever have anyone sit with me in that
Mm.
and not try to fix it or even just talk to it? Like it gives me breath to be like, yes, thank you for hearing that I don't want to move on that subject. Don't rush to fix, because I think, I don't know, like the instinct might be, whether when you're in conversation with anyone, whether it's therapy, coaching, or like talking to a friend, there's an instinct to be like, I get it. And you know what? Da-da-da-da-da. Like to sort of still come in with the but this, but that. And it's like, I need to regulate in this space for a while. Like this is actually what I need more of in order for me to be able to have any other conversations about it. And it's not going to be now. That I think gets missed often, just coming from my memory of what I was met with in trying to ever have a conversation with anyone about this. I don't know that anyone ever. I think I had a friend. I did have a friend. She's still like this, and she'll be like, "Oh, I know." And then she does this thing with the smile, like she can't, like she just gets nervous and doesn't, and she smiles, and then she just gets awkward about it and needs to change the subject. So the actual being with, like, oh, I hear your voice, is probably what we maybe need more of.
Yeah. But I think I can do it because I get it and I don't think they're wrong for being where they are.
Mm-hmm.
It
Mm-hmm.
normally comes from a place where the therapist is going, oh, I can see where you are and I think I know where you need to be.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, and I
Yeah.
see this a lot just with therapists and maybe coaches, like helpers in general. If your sense of doing a good job has to be contingent on the progress that the client is making, that's where you get into something because now it's about you managing your
Yeah.
feelings about,
Right.
no, I'm supposed to be helpful here as the therapist. I'm supposed to fix, I'm supposed to do X, Y,
Yes.
Z. And it's the most unhelpful
Yes.
thing
Yes.
ever. And the paradox is when you do it less, people make more progress.
I know. It's the irony. There was another, the concept of where you were talking about what is. There was a reel that somebody shared with me yesterday about this woman who got on an airplane and she was in a bigger body. And she was talking about how she couldn't fit in the seats and it was uncomfortable and the armrest was digging in. And she was saying it's hard. It's hard to be so uncomfortable on a flight. Now, the comment section, as you would imagine, was that's your fault. Nobody should be accommodating you, et cetera, et cetera. What acceptance would be here isn't about the story attached to why she's in the body she's in, why the airplane, even why the airplane. It's not about that part. It's just about she's saying, I'm really uncomfortable and I don't fit in the seats because this is the body I have right now. She didn't talk once about, and diets don't work, or and I'm trying to lose weight, but I can't. Or she didn't talk about, and we had no context for anything else about her situation. And I felt like it was such an example of what it's an example of this, like when you're talking about acceptance, it's just like take the story at face value. It's not about all the meaning that we're assigning to it or what she should do next or what she's not been doing or what her intentions are or anything. She was just saying, it's hard. Like it's hard for me to be on this airplane right now because my body doesn't fit in the seat. Period, right? Like it's almost that present moment thing. That's what acceptance is. It's just about what is, not about the stories about what is. And I think that that's potentially like a reflex we have as humans to be like, and so, and if you don't want to be in the future, you should be. But acceptance just keeps the story at the face value. It's just like, this is just what's happening right now. And I just thought that was the real impressed me that way. And that she didn't, I wonder if it was intentional that she like did not include any context at all. There was no other message than what she was saying. Which is hard. It's like an art form to do that. But that to me is what the practice is.
So I'll just give one current example, and then I think maybe we could compare it to defeat. So I'm going through a challenging time with a family situation, and I know, and I'm doing it regularly. I'm sitting down and I'm letting it go and I'm accepting, and I get some peace. Exactly like you were saying, just accepting the situation, the facts of the situation, and kind of letting go of the story. And then the story comes back and I pick it up again. And so now, even in the recording it, and I said before we recorded, like, I've got a whole load of stuff going on about the situation in my head. So at the moment, well, right in this moment, because we're talking about acceptance, I feel quite accepting. But if I were to get into the story again, I would pick it up and I would be very much in it again. And I guess another thing that I just wanted to say about acceptance is I think quite often it's a practice for a lot of things, especially like deeply held. I mean, we're talking really early experiences that are being triggered now with this family situation. So these stories are going to keep coming up, and it's going to be the same probably with your body as well. Like stories are going to come up. So acceptance, it's not a one-time deal that you, for many people anyway, maybe
Yeah.
some, that you reach this place of pure, unadulterated body acceptance that you are just so at peace and allowing of what is, and
Yeah.
you don't have a resistant thought or feeling about it.
Yeah.
But I know from my own experience over and over again that whatever challenges are going on, if I take moments here and there to accept the situation, accept the things that are outside of my control, I can experience some relief. And
Yeah.
that's the only reason why acceptance makes sense to me, is because I have experienced so much relief, so much peace from the practice of it. If you have not had that experience,
Yeah. Good
it might
point.
have a whole different thing, because it's probably so overtwined or intertwined with defeat. And what
Yeah.
was oppression was the word that you used earlier as well. To accept can feel like I'm accepting
Yes.
oppression. I'm being oppressed and I've been defeated by oppression.
And that might be a good consideration because I'm thinking about some clients I have who have a history of where acceptance was defeat because they had to do what their parents, like made them do or like whatever situations that they were in. They didn't have a voice. They accepted something equals I had to swallow something, like I had to push something down in me in order to. That is a different experience than I think what you're talking about and what I can relate to as well in terms of what acceptance has felt like for me in different contexts. I have had to accept things that I didn't agree with, and that has felt oppressive. I have also experienced acceptance in this other way that's just been more simple. It's not been attached to all those things, oppression, which is liberating. And yes, knowing that exists, that's what it's like, oh, that's what we're talking about, not that other thing. That's really important. And to your point, last night I am now able to get on a treadmill. My knee is great. And I was going along. I can jog now. And I'm going along and I'm like, see, Stef, you had this time where you couldn't you couldn't go to the gym or you couldn't move, you couldn't go for walks. And like I wasn't thinking these words, but it's kind of like you accepted it, and here we are, and it's okay now, right? So then my other knee starts to tweak.
Oh,
And all of a sudden I'm like, oh hell
what?
no. Like the threat of it, like all of a sudden I didn't have access to that except, and I noted it. I was like, that's funny. But it was so, it's like when you're in retrospect, it's like oh yeah, acceptance. But then when the threat came up again in a different way, I felt threatened by it. And that is the case to be made of like, that feeling can feel really scary and you want to run away from it. What held me was that it was kind of like, you got through this before. You've worked on acceptance in this way. If it comes up again, there will be resistance. There will be all this turmoil. That's part of it. And you will work through that the same way you did the last time. But in that moment of turmoil, you don't have that. It's present. It's like, let's deal with what's present, which is that I've got turmoil about it and resistance
Yes.
about it,
Yes.
which I did. But it was just so close to have them so close together where I had this, like,
Hmm.
I had the access into the regulated acceptance and then I had the dysregulated resistance right in a row. And it would reinforce the point, kind
Hmm.
of, yeah, that is how it's going to feel. It's not like I worked on acceptance on my knee and now every time I have a body issue in the future, I'll be in acceptance because I did that once. It's like, no, I'll have to
Yes.
work back towards it again. And it's the same with body image. I feel like the times where I have body image moments, it's like I'm back where I was. And it's like, right, because it's not that it's a given. It's something, it's just that I've got to I can get there faster, but it's not like I don't feel that same amount of resistance. It comes right back. But knowing there's a map for something or there's something you've gotten to before that has felt liberating is comforting. It's safe. It feels better.
I wanted to look up the definition of defeat to try and because my mind keeps going, well, that's I can like you were saying earlier, sometimes it's hard to put the language on how the two feel different. But first of all, it's come up with a noun, an instant of defeating or being defeated. Thanks, that's really helpful.
Never binge again.
And it's funny, it says to defeat is to win victory over. Because I guess the idea is you would defeat something as opposed to we're talking about having been defeated. So the
Yeah, well,
defeat has
something else
happened
beat
to us.
you is how I see
Yes.
that.
So something had victory over you.
Mm-hmm.
And for that to happen, there's kind of got to be these sides,
Yeah.
which is what you're talking about, because you talk about this idea of feeling like this unfairness, this thing happening to you
Yeah.
with your body. I never felt that. It never felt like there was another side.
Really.
There was this circumstance and this thing that I didn't like, but it wasn't like I don't think so. I'm trying to get it clear in my head, but I don't think I felt it like it was
Huh.
something that had any will of its own or motivation of its own. So therefore, how would I feel like it was oppressing me or it got me?
Y-
Because do
Do
you
you
know what I
struggle
mean?
with hierarchy?
Yes.
Oh. Hmm.
I have a problem with authority, particularly.
What I mean is, have you felt, I feel like there are people, I don't know if there's two kinds of people, but almost like that. Like you're either always in competition with some other force and you've got to win, you've got to come out on top or on bottom, which is the way I was raised. Or maybe it's more like a pervasive sense of defeat,
Yeah.
but more like a helplessness of it. That's interesting.
Yes. Yeah. So
Yeah.
my problem with authority is more I don't want authority to notice me.
Ah, ha, ha.
So I can
Okay.
remember when I was in the police, I don't want the chief superintendent, I don't want any of those people to even know who I am.
Ah.
Just because you have power over me, you can misuse that power. So I don't want you to even see me. It even came up just a flash of it and it went because I could see it for what it was. In my yoga class, my yoga teacher told me that I was her favorite, which is a nice thing, but part of me was like, "Oh no. Like I don't want to be noticed in that way." But then she
Yeah.
said something really lovely. She said, it's one of the nicest compliments actually I've probably had. She said, she came up to me one week when I was absolutely exhausted. I was just not my usual self. And she said, are you okay? She goes, you don't quite seem your normal self. I said, to be honest, I'm exhausted. I'm not feeling great. She goes, oh, I thought so. She said, because normally she goes, you have such a, she said chilled energy or something about my vibe or my energy. She goes, so when I need to feel like, I think she even used the word regulated. I don't know if I'm paraphrasing her correctly. She goes, I often look to you. And I was
Oh,
like,
it's such a nice thing. Yeah. It's
oh, so
such a nice
that was
thing.
nice. But in the moment when she's like, you're my favorite, I was like, oh no, don't notice me. I was like that at school as well. Never teachers, but I don't want to be noticed by the teacher.
Because you
I
have
don't
to
want to be
uphold it.
noticed. No, because they have power over me. And if they
Mm.
don't notice me, they won't misuse it on me. I know exactly where it comes from. It's my dad
I
issues,
know.
of
Mine's
course.
my dad too. That's why we couldn't do the father wound episode.
I know. Because it's still showing up everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. not wanting to be noticed reminds me too of like, I'm going to ignore it, like the self-aware, whereas I'm the opposite. It's like, oh, I am ready for you. And if I need to, I'll win. Like if you're going to put me in a contest. And also that was the setup with my siblings too, for us to compete with each other. So it's always been a winning thing. And I'm always like ready. And I think it must be nature nurture kind of, but it's so interesting to notice like you and I have the same, and everyone listening, we have the same human emotions and to some extent like the same, something of the same like experience in different ways. And how it's translated is so different, but it's really not, it's like this idea of defeat for you feels this way. For me, it feels this other way. But ultimately, we're talking about the same thing.
Do you think to feel defeated, because, to defeat is to have victory over, or to be defeated is someone or something's had victory over you, that in order to feel that defeat, that there has to be a concept of something acting against you? It needs to feel personal in some way. Because I think mine felt very impersonal. I didn't feel like I was being punished or attacked. It felt
No, mine
very
feels personal.
impersonal. Interesting. There's something in that, I
If
think,
it's
maybe.
if it's not personal, I can accept that. Like
Yeah.
if it's like that's how my body, it's like when I realized that my body size and genetic code when I untangled that from my dad or whatever, it felt like, oh, that's not about me. That's not something winning over me. That's just what is. But if it's when it feels when I personalize it, I
Mm.
can't, that's when I'm like this. No, I'm not doing it. I'm not resisting. And
Mhm.
that will feel defeat. That's the defeat
Mhm.
part.
I wonder if this is then why I don't know that I've experienced as much resistance to acceptance as I'm sometimes seeing and bumping up against in others.
Mm.
Because I need to go away and think about this, because I think I've just
Yeah.
learned something about myself. None of it feels, is that fully true? And now I need to take that away.
Okay.
That needs too much unpicking, I think,
Do
to
you know what's helpful
do
here?
here.
I don't know if it's helpful for your style or mine. Maybe both. I told Mike yesterday, I was like, I think I'm an accidental Buddhist. Like, I didn't ever study Buddhism or know about it, but if a lot of the things I've come to feel like they align with Buddhism. One of them is the non-attachment, right? Like, so the attachment part is where you feel it feels personal. And where I've gotten to is like when I can depersonalize the experience, that's where I can feel, oh, like, oh, like it's just like it's not about me. It's
Mm.
and that is where my acceptance lives, is in the non-attachment.
Mhm.
And that wasn't something I tried to do. That's a place I've navigated towards, I guess, because it felt like that is like, oh, there's the light. That's the safe place, is where it's not personal. Um, so to me, there's something about the attachment theme
Mhm.
in here that has to do with where acceptance is versus where defeat is.
And then I guess for a trigger, just thinking of triggers, something to be triggered, it probably needs to feel personal as well. I'm thinking about when someone might be triggered by diet talk or numbers or something like that. There has to be some automatic, like it's happening faster than lightning, but personalization of that. Otherwise,
Yes.
this is
A
why I'm
hundred
having such a
percent.
tough time with this family situation, because it definitely feels personal.
Yeah, that's the hardest. I feel like,
Mm.
well, I shouldn't say that, but oh yeah, to me, that's like closer threat. It's like, I
Yeah.
don't like the way that feels.
But I think I depersonalize a lot, and now I don't. Yeah. Anyway, I'm gonna stop stop pondering.
Well,
um.
depersonalization can also become numbness, right? There's
Yes. Oh,
probably some kind
yes.
of healthy blend.
Yes. Yes. And I think that's where my mind was then suddenly going, is this healthy? Is this something else? But also, I think people often turn a corner with the shame piece around something like binging or body image distress when they recognize that this isn't their fault.
Yeah. Hmm.
With all the talk about how we know binging gets triggered and all the things that are sort of stacked up against you when you are in the cycle of binging, that you can't just decide to break out of it. and people have so much shame because they think they should have done. And I'm there on the outside looking at them going, well, you couldn't have done anything different based on what you were believing and feeling and what was going on biologically in the moment. There was no other outcome than your behavior. Your beliefs and your feelings and your biology has to be different in that moment for a different outcome to be the case.
Yeah.
Outside of the moment and going,
Yeah.
oh, I should have just been able to do it differently because I'm thinking like this
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. Which is why the idea of accepting a binge can
Mm-hmm.
feel like the opposite of what you want to be doing, because it feels like you're condoning it, which
Yes.
is not the same. It's like, again, everything shifted when I realized that what my body was doing wasn't about me. Like, it wasn't my character or my personhood doing that. Then it was just frustration. Then it
Yeah.
was like, ugh, this is annoying. I hate this, but it's not like me. That part shifted everything for me. Like, that's why the education piece of is like a bullet point I have in like why, like where, like how to begin, like, you know, where to work on this. To me, education is so important. Like, what's this, a lot largely biology and even nervous system, like where regulating comes in, like why that's going on. Because if you think it's you and that you have actually control over it, then of course you're going to be like holding on to, you want the shame and guilt because then you'll change. But if
Mm-hmm.
it's not there, it's like, oh, then it's just like, oh, well, that's not fair. And it's like, yes, and that is not fair. And that's again the airplane. Like, it's like, okay, there's a what is here, but the stories about that are different.
Well, that's where you're at risk of feeling defeated, because if you're looking at this and going, oh, all these forces are working against me that keep triggering my binging,
Mm-hmm.
and I can't do anything about it by willpower alone, that I think there can be a moment or maybe a longer period of defeat unless it can switch round to I can understand and start to learn about what these triggers
Yes.
are, and there's hope for me to be able to
Yes.
do something different.
Correct.
Without that piece, just recognizing you're powerless alone just
Yes.
feels like all these things
Absolutely.
acting on you.
To me, that's what it was. It was more like, and this is why I always talk about, like, I don't like when the short-term tips. I don't like, because I don't think that they're relevant. It's almost like when I was got education on what was going on in my body and what was causing my binges. There's nothing I could do about it though in the moment. Like, the way that restriction forces were acting on me, or nervous system dysregulation was acting on me, was going to still keep acting on me. But understanding that was like, okay, well, what can I do about all that? You know what I mean? Like, what influence do I have? I might not have 100% influence, but I could start having that's where like the body acceptance was like a little bit of the influence. If I stop trying to be a size X, then like my hunger actually maybe won't be as, then I won't be, you know? And then it was like this longer term reorganization of what I had control over and what I didn't. But that was helpful, because then it was like, okay, then I'm going to focus on what I do have control over instead of always focusing on what I don't have control over, which isn't going to move. But it's not, I don't think it's an absolute. I mean, some cases will be absolute in certain scenarios that people are in where there is just no control over something. But generally, many cases of things that feel completely out of our control can be reorganized a little bit when we understand them, to be like, okay, where are my points of influence? And that's what I'm going to start working with. And that feels empowering. And it doesn't feel helpless or defeated. It just restructures your areas of focus. You know, like I have a client who says to me, I don't understand why I have to change. My entire life has been about me not getting anything I want. And so I should be able to want X, Y, and Z, or I should want my body to look a certain way and get that. And so a lot of the work is about, if you keep focusing on the places where you don't have control, you will always feel like you don't have control. If we start looking at the places where you do, or where you've got influence, that's going to be what empowers you, you know? But we can get into the vortex of like, we only then want the things we can't control. That's a whole nother episode, for real.
Well,
Well, that about wraps it up.
it sure do. As usual, draw your own conclusions, dear listener. We're not going to do all the work. Also, we don't want to tell you what the conclusions should
Yeah,
be either.
absolutely not.
Yeah.
All
We
right.
hope you can accept that. All right.
All right. Bye
All right.
bye.
Bye bye.